You think I didn't see you looking at my man? Who do you think you are?
I don't know your man. Please move.
Adaeze Carter was 36 years old and 7 months pregnant when a stranger decided she was the wrong woman to confront in a public mall on a Saturday afternoon in October. That stranger's name was Brittany Walsh. Adaeze Carter had not always been the kind of woman people underestimated. In her early career as a junior associate at Morrison & Reed, one of the most respected law firms in the state, she had been underestimated constantly. Too young, too quiet, too measured in rooms that rewarded volume and visible aggression. She had grown up in Atlanta, the second of 3 daughters, to a father who was a high school principal and a mother who ran a catering business from their kitchen for 22 years before opening her first restaurant. Both of her parents had taught her the same thing in different ways: that the people who last are not always the loudest. They are the ones who know when to speak and what to say when they do. Adaeze had taken that lesson into every room she had ever entered professionally. She had watched those rooms carefully. She had learned which arguments won before juries and which ones only sounded like they were winning in the hallway. She had learned that judges respond to precision, not passion. That the most dangerous attorney in any courtroom is not the one who raises their voice, but the one who never needs to. And she had built a reputation on that understanding. By 32, she was a senior partner at Morrison & Reed. By 34, she was chief legal officer, the youngest in the firm's 81-year history. By 36, she was 7 months pregnant with her first child and taking a rare Saturday afternoon to herself at the Meridian Mall. The kind of afternoon her husband Marcus had practically forced her to take because she had not left the office before 9 in the evening for 11 consecutive days. Marcus Carter was a federal judge. He had been appointed 3 years earlier after a career that had taken him from public defender, where he had spent 6 years representing people who could not afford to be poorly represented, to district attorney, to the federal bench. He was known for 2 things professionally: an absolute intolerance for procedural errors and a personal philosophy that justice was not a concept to be applied selectively. He was also, by every account of everyone who knew them, completely devoted to Adaeze. They had met at a bar association dinner 11 years earlier. He had been 31 and she had been 25, and he had spent 40 minutes trying to find a reason to walk over to where she was standing. Before his colleague simply pushed him in her direction, he had introduced himself, she had shaken his hand, looked at him directly and said, with the complete calm of a woman who had assessed the situation accurately, that she had noticed him looking for 20 minutes and had begun to wonder if he was going to say hello before the evening ended. He had laughed. She had smiled. 8 years later, they were married in a ceremony that her mother catered, and his mother cried through from beginning to end. 3 years after that, Adaeze was 7 months pregnant. And on a Saturday in October, she was walking through the Meridian Mall atrium, carrying bags from 3 different stores, one of which contained a set of small shoes she had spent 17 minutes selecting, when a young woman stepped into her path and changed the trajectory of both their lives. Brittany Walsh was 24 years old and had grown up in Clearwater, a mid-sized suburb 40 minutes from the city, in a household that had given her certain advantages and certain blind spots in roughly equal measure. Her parents had divorced when she was 9. She had lived with her mother, Carol, who worked as an office manager at a dental practice, and who, by her own admission in quieter moments, had struggled to maintain consistent boundaries with her only daughter after the divorce. It was not that Carol did not love Brittany. She loved her completely. But love and consequence are 2 different things, and Carol had found consequence difficult to deliver to a child she felt she had already hurt by allowing the marriage to fall apart. The result was a young woman who was warm and funny in the right circumstances and completely unprepared for resistance in the wrong ones. Brittany had worked various jobs since finishing high school: retail, waitressing, a brief stint at a salon that ended when she argued with the owner about scheduling. And she was currently 3 months into a job at a mid-range clothing store in the Meridian Mall, which was why she knew its layout well, and which was why she had been at the mall on that Saturday afternoon. Her boyfriend Tyler Marsh was 26. He worked in car sales at a dealership 40 minutes north of the city and drove a leased BMW that consumed a significant portion of his monthly income. He was attractive in the particular way of men who have always been told they are attractive and have organized their personality around that fact. Tyler and Brittany had been together for 8 months. It was the longest relationship Brittany had maintained in 3 years. She was aware, in the way that people are aware of things they prefer not to examine directly, that Tyler was not entirely faithful to her. There had been messages she had seen accidentally, explanations that did not fully account for the time they described, a name that came up once and was never explained satisfactorily. She had not addressed any of these things directly. What she had done instead, and without being fully conscious of the pattern, was redirect her suspicion outward, toward other women, toward situations that confirmed what she already feared, without requiring her to confront the person she feared it about. On that Saturday afternoon, Tyler had been watching Adaeze walk through the atrium. Brittany had noticed, and instead of turning to Tyler, instead of asking the question that needed to be asked about the man standing beside her, she had walked toward a stranger. What happened next was not a decision she thought through, and it was simply what she did when the pressure became too much to hold. The confrontation lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds, according to the mall security timestamp. Adaeze had attempted to de-escalate twice, once by explaining she did not know Tyler, and once by asking Brittany to move out of her path. Both attempts had been met with escalating aggression from Brittany, who had moved from accusation to personal insults within the first 90 seconds. The shove happened at the 3-minute and 58-second mark. It was captured from 4 simultaneous angles. Camera 1 showed the full scene. Both women, the distance between them, Adaeze's posture in the moments before impact. Camera 2 caught Brittany's face at the moment of contact, expression deliberate, not impulsive. Camera 3 captured Adaeze stumbling backward, and her hand going immediately to her stomach, her other hand catching the pillar. Camera 4 showed Tyler, standing 40 feet away, turning and walking in the opposite direction at the precise moment the security guard began running. Adaeze steadied herself. She looked down at her stomach for 3 full seconds. Then she looked at Brittany. Her expression did not change. She reached for her phone. She called Marcus. He did not answer. He was in the study with his phone on, silent, reading. She left a voicemail that was 7 words long. Then she called 911. She gave the dispatcher her name, her location, a description of what had occurred, and her medical status. She remained on the call until the police arrived. She did not raise her voice once. Brittany was arrested at the mall 41 minutes after the incident. As she had not tried to leave, Tyler had. He was gone from the atrium within 30 seconds of the security guard arriving, moving with the particular speed of a man who has learned to identify exits quickly. By the time the police arrived, he was in his car on the highway. Brittany had stayed. She had stayed because leaving had not occurred to her as a serious option. She had done nothing wrong, or so she believed, with the complete conviction of someone who has never had that belief challenged by consequence. She told the first security officer that the other woman had been provocative. She told the second security officer the same thing. She told the police officer who arrived 12 minutes later that she had barely touched her. The officer, a 14-year veteran named Rodriguez, who had responded to more mall incidents than he could count, asked Brittany to wait and walked over to the security desk. He watched the footage for approximately 90 seconds. Then he walked back. He showed Brittany the footage on his tablet. She watched herself shove a visibly pregnant woman hard enough to send her stumbling 2 steps backward. She went quiet. She was charged with assault on a pregnant person, a Class A misdemeanor carrying enhanced penalties under state law, and transported to the county processing center. Adaeze gave her statement professionally and completely. She confirmed she had not fallen. She confirmed the baby appeared unaffected. She requested the incident report number and the case filing information. She thanked Officer Rodriguez by name. Then she drove home. Marcus Carter heard Adaeze's car in the driveway at 5:14 in the afternoon. He had listened to her voicemail 3 times since she left it and had spent the intervening 90 minutes in a state of controlled stillness that people who knew him well would have recognized as the particular way he processed things that required him to be careful. She came through the door, carrying her shopping bags. He took them from her without saying anything and set them on the kitchen table. Then he looked at her. "Tell me," he said. She told him everything, calmly, sequentially, without editorializing. She told him about the atrium, and Tyler and Brittany, and the shove and the security footage, and Officer Rodriguez and the arrest. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, there was a silence of approximately 12 seconds. "How are you in any pain?" he asked. She said no. "Has the baby moved since it happened?" She said yes, twice in the car on the way home. He nodded once. "I want you to call Dr. Okafor tomorrow morning first thing," he said. "Not because I think anything is wrong, because I want to know for certain that nothing is wrong." She agreed. He was quiet for another moment. "Do you want me to handle this, or do you want Claire to handle it?" Claire was Adaeze's personal attorney, a woman she had worked alongside for 11 years and trusted completely. "Claire," Adaeze said, "this is not your case, Marcus. You know that." He nodded again. She was right, and he knew she was right. A sitting federal judge whose wife was the victim in a criminal case could not involve himself in that case in any professional capacity. The separation was not just procedural, it was ethical, and Marcus Carter's ethics were not negotiable. But he made 2 phone calls that evening after Adaeze had gone to bed. The first was to the clerk of court to confirm which judge had been assigned to misdemeanor assault cases in their district for the following term. The second was to his personal attorney, not to intervene, but to understand the landscape. He did not tell Adaeze about either call. He made her dinner. He asked about the small shoes she had bought. He sat beside her on the sofa and listened to her talk about everything except the mall, because she needed not to talk about it, and he understood that without being asked. He was that kind of husband. Brittany Walsh spent 4 hours and 17 minutes in the county processing center. She had 1 phone call. She called Tyler. It went to voicemail. She left a message. She sat in the processing center and waited. Her mother, Carol, arrived at 9:47 in the evening, having driven from Clearwater after receiving the automated notification about her daughter's arrest. She posted bail without speaking in the car on the way home. Carol Walsh was a woman who had spent 24 years trying to balance unconditional love with appropriate response, and had found the balance genuinely difficult. But she was not a foolish woman, and she had seen the expression on her daughter's face when Brittany got into the car, the particular expression of someone who is beginning to understand that this time is different. They did not speak until they were inside the house. "Tell me exactly what happened," Carol said. Brittany told her. Carol listened. When Brittany finished, Carol was quiet for a long time. "Was the woman doing anything to you?" Carol asked. Brittany said she had been looking at Tyler. "Was she doing anything to you?" Carol asked again. Brittany said nothing. Carol went to her laptop. She typed the name from the incident report into the search bar. She read for approximately 3 minutes. Then she turned the screen toward Brittany. Adaeze Carter, Chief Legal Officer, Morrison & Reed, multiple awards, multiple notable cases. A woman at the absolute top of her profession. Carol scrolled down. There was a photograph from a judicial appointment ceremony. Adaeze standing beside a man in federal judicial robes, both of them smiling. The caption read, "Federal Judge Marcus Carter and his wife Adaeze Carter at his swearing-in ceremony." Brittany read it once. She read it twice. She read it a third time. "Her husband is a judge," Brittany said. Carol closed the laptop. "You need a better lawyer," she said. Brittany called Tyler the next morning. He did not answer. She called again that afternoon. Voicemail. She sent 3 text messages over the following 2 days. The first 2 received no response. The third received a single reply that said, "I can't get involved in legal situations. Hope everything works out." She called him immediately after reading it. He answered on the 4th ring. "Tyler, I need you to tell them what happened. You were there. You saw everything." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't really see anything," he said. "I was pretty far away." "You were 40 feet away. You saw all of it." "I don't want to get involved in a court case, Britt." "I'm sorry." She said his name. He said he was sorry again. Then he ended the call. She sat with her phone in her hand for a long time. She called him once more that evening. He did not answer. She did not hear from Tyler Marsh again. Brittany's assigned public defender was a man named Gerald Owens, who had been practicing criminal defense for 19 years, and who carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had seen every version of every situation he was currently facing. He reviewed the case file in 11 minutes. Then he called Brittany into his office and explained the situation with the directness of a man who no longer had time for gradual realization. The evidence was clear. The footage was from 4 angles. The victim was visibly pregnant. There were 11 witnesses. The defendant had remained at the scene and made statements to 2 security officers and a police officer that were inconsistent with the footage. "Your best option is to plead guilty, express genuine remorse, and present character witnesses," Gerald said. "First offense, no priors, employed. You are looking at probation and community service." Brittany said she wanted to fight it. Gerald looked at her for a moment. "On what grounds?" he asked. Brittany said she had been provoked. Gerald asked her to describe the provocation. She described Adaeze walking through the atrium. Gerald was quiet. "Walking through a mall is not legal provocation," he said carefully. "Do you have money for a private attorney?" She did not. She borrowed $3,000 from Carol and hired Dennis Park, a private attorney who had been practicing for 8 years and who reviewed the case file and called Brittany within 24 hours to tell her he also advised a guilty plea. Brittany told Dennis she wanted to argue provocation. Dennis explained that the victim was 7 months pregnant in the footage, was carrying shopping bags, made no aggressive movement, and had audibly attempted to de-escalate twice before contact was made. "There is no provocation argument here," Dennis said. "The footage eliminates it entirely." Brittany said she wanted to try anyway. Dennis filed the motion. Claire, Adaeze's attorney, filed the response in 38 minutes. It was 11 pages long. Judge Patricia Monroe read both filings. She denied the motion in 2 sentences. If you are enjoying this story, please like this video and subscribe to Turning Point Tales for more powerful stories every week. Now let us continue. The full understanding of who Adaeze Carter was came to Brittany in 4 stages over the weeks between the arrest and the hearing. The first stage was her mother's laptop at the kitchen table. The second stage was a Google search she did herself at 2 in the morning, 3 days later. The kind of search that people do when they are hoping to find something that makes the situation less serious, and find instead something that makes it significantly more so. She found Adaeze's professional profile, her case history, her awards, 3 interviews she had given about women in law, and a profile piece from a legal publication that described her as one of the most formidable legal minds in the state. The third stage was a conversation with a friend who worked in the legal industry, who told Brittany, with the uncomfortable honesty of someone delivering unwelcome information carefully, that assaulting the wife of a federal judge while she was visibly pregnant was not the kind of situation that resolved quietly. The fourth stage was sitting in Dennis's office 2 weeks before the hearing and watching him read Claire's latest filing, with an expression that told Brittany everything she needed to know about how well their case was going. "She is very good," Dennis said quietly, almost to himself. Brittany asked what that meant for her. Dennis set the filing down. "It means that every argument we make will be met with a better prepared counter-argument," he said. "It means the judge will be reading excellent work on both sides and will have no difficulty determining which side is stronger." Brittany said nothing. "I am going to ask you one more time," Dennis said. "Are you certain you want to take this to a hearing rather than entering a plea?" Brittany thought about Tyler not answering his phone. She thought about her mother's face at the kitchen table. She thought about the footage from 4 angles that she had watched 17 times, trying to find an angle that told a different story. There was no angle that told a different story. "Yes," she said. "I want the hearing." Dennis nodded once and said nothing else. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning in late October. So Brittany arrived with Dennis at 8:45. Adaeze arrived with Claire at 8:52. She was 8 months pregnant. She wore a grey maternity dress, low heels, and carried a leather notebook that she had used in courtrooms for 9 years. She sat in the gallery. She did not look at Brittany. Judge Patricia Munro entered at 9 on the dot. She was 61 years old, had been on the bench for 19 years, and had the particular energy of someone who had stopped being impressed by things a long time ago and had since been exclusively interested in facts. She reviewed the footage herself, all 4 angles, in complete silence for approximately 4 minutes. The courtroom was very quiet. Brittany watched the judge watch the footage. Then Judge Munro set down her tablet and looked at Dennis. "Counsel, I have reviewed your motion for dismissal based on provocation and the response filed by the victim's attorney. I have also reviewed the security footage from 4 separate angles. I will ask you directly, is there any element of the provocation argument that is supported by the footage?" Dennis stood. "Your Honor, my client maintains—" "That was not my question," Judge Munro said. "Is there any element of the provocation argument that is supported by the footage?" Dennis paused. "No, Your Honor," he said. Judge Munro looked at Brittany. "Ms. Walsh, I am going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them directly." Brittany said, "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand the charge against you?" "Yes." "Do you understand that assault on a pregnant person carries an enhanced penalty in this state?" Brittany said she had not known that at the time. "You know it now," Judge Munro said. "Do you understand it now?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Is there anything you would like to say before I proceed to sentencing?" Dennis leaned toward Brittany. She stood up. She said she was sorry. She said she had not been thinking clearly. She said she understood she had made a serious mistake. Judge Munro listened. Then she looked at her notes. Judge Munro sentenced Brittany Walsh to 9 months probation, 250 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling for a minimum of 6 months, and a $5,000 fine payable in installments. She also issued a formal no-contact order protecting Adaeze Carter for a period of 3 years, meaning that any contact, direct or indirect, intentional or incidental, would result in immediate arrest and potential jail time. She looked at Brittany when she delivered the sentence. "Ms. Walsh, I want to be direct with you about something that is not part of the legal record, but that I believe is important for you to understand," she said. The courtroom was completely still. "You made a decision in a public place to physically confront a pregnant stranger over something you believed she had done. The footage shows she had done nothing. She attempted to de-escalate twice. She was carrying shopping bags. She was 7 months pregnant." She paused. "The legal system has processed what happened. But I want you to sit with the full picture of it," Not just the charge, the full picture. A pregnant woman caught a pillar to stop herself from falling because of a decision you made in approximately 4 seconds. Brittany stood at the defendant's table. She did not speak. "Complete your terms," Judge Monroe said. "All of them. On time. Do not come back to my courtroom." She closed the file. Dennis leaned toward Brittany. "No jail time," he said quietly. "This is the best possible outcome." Brittany looked across the gallery. Adaeze was writing something in her leather notebook. She had not looked up once during the sentencing. Adaeze Carter delivered a healthy baby girl 8 weeks after the hearing. Her name was Jordan Adaeze Carter. 7 pounds and 4 ounces. She arrived on a Wednesday morning after 14 hours of labor. Marcus was there for every minute of it. He held Jordan first. The nurses handed her to him while they attended to Adaeze. And he stood at the window of the delivery room with his daughter in his arms and looked at the city outside and felt, by his own account, to the 2 people he ever told this to, that everything he had ever done in his life had been leading to exactly this moment. He did not say this to Adaeze that night. He said it 6 months later, on a Sunday morning, when Jordan was asleep in her crib and Adaeze was making coffee in the kitchen, and he walked in and stood behind her and put his arms around her and said it quietly into her hair. She set the coffee down. She turned around. She looked at him the way she had looked at him since that bar association dinner 11 years earlier, with the complete attention of a woman who has chosen deliberately and has never regretted it. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Adaeze returned to Morrison and Reed 11 weeks after Jordan's birth. Her first case back was a corporate merger that generated significant press coverage, not because of her involvement, but because of the size of the deal. Her name appeared in 3 publications. 2 of them mentioned in passing that she had recently returned from maternity leave. She found this mildly amusing. Her second case was a wrongful termination suit that she won in 3 days. Her third was a contract dispute that settled on terms that entirely favored her client. She did not think about Brittany Walsh, not because she had forgiven her in any formal or emotional sense, but because Brittany Walsh occupied exactly the amount of space in Adaeze Carter's daily life that the situation warranted, which was none. The no-contact order existed. The case was closed. Justice, imperfect and procedural as all justice is, had been applied. Adaeze had Jordan. She had Marcus. She had her work and her name and the firm she had helped build. She had everything that mattered. There was nothing left to think about. Brittany Walsh completed her community service over 9 months, 250 hours. Every Thursday and Saturday morning for most of that period at a community center 20 minutes from her mother's house, where she helped with after-school programs and weekend meal preparation for elderly residents. Or she had expected to find it humiliating. She did not find it humiliating. She found it, unexpectedly, something closer to grounding. The particular effect of being required to show up consistently for people who had no knowledge of her situation and no investment in her narrative about it. She attended anger management every Thursday evening for 7 months. The counselor's name was Dr. Patricia Webb, a woman in her 50s who had the particular skill of asking questions that sounded simple until you tried to answer them. The question that stayed with Brittany longest was one Dr. Webb asked in the 3rd session. When you walked toward that woman in the mall, what were you actually angry about? Brittany had said, I was angry because she was looking at Tyler. Dr. Webb had waited. And before that, she said, what were you angry about before that? Brittany had not answered that day. She had thought about it for 2 weeks. She answered it in session 5. She paid the fine in 4 installments. She moved back into her mother's house for 8 months while she rebuilt her finances. She got a new job, administrative work at a medical office, that she was better at than she expected to be. She did not see Tyler again. She did not look for him. 18 months after the incident at the Meridian Mall, Brittany Walsh sat in a coffee shop near her new apartment and opened her laptop. She had not searched Adaeze Carter's name since the night her mother had shown her the photograph. She searched it now. The first result was a profile piece from 6 weeks earlier. Adaeze had been named one of the top 10 legal minds in the state by a prominent industry publication. There was a photograph. Adaeze was at an award ceremony. Jordan, now approximately 7 months old, was on her hip. Marcus was beside her. Both of them were laughing at something happening off camera. Jordan was looking directly at the photographer with the particular expression of a baby who has decided the situation is interesting. Brittany looked at the photograph for a long time. She thought about the marble atrium. She thought about Dr. Webb's question. She thought about Tyler not answering his phone. She closed the laptop. She finished her coffee. She went to work. There is a version of this story where Brittany Walsh is simply the villain and Adaeze Carter is simply the hero, and in the most straightforward reading that is accurate enough. But the more complete version of this story is about something else. It is about what happens when someone who has spent their entire life moving through the world without a consequence that matched the size of their actions finally encounters one. Brittany did not push Adaeze because she was a cruel person. She pushed her because she had learned, through years of small lessons, that the world tends to step back, that people absorb aggression rather than respond to it, that if you move forward with enough certainty, the situation will resolve in your favor. Every time before that atrium, it had. Adaeze Carter was not a woman who stepped back. Not in courtrooms, not in boardrooms, not in marble atriums on Saturday afternoons. She followed through, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of the simple belief that actions have consequences and that believing so requires you to ensure that they do. She followed through, and in a coffee shop 40 minutes from the city, 18 months later, a young woman closed a laptop and sat with the full weight of what she had learned. That the world does not always step back. That the woman you choose to push might be the one woman in that building whose entire professional life has been spent ensuring that the right thing happens. That sometimes, not always, but sometimes, justice arrives not with noise and drama, but quietly, in a grey dress, carrying a leather notebook, and it does not need to raise its voice, because it never needed to. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Turning Point Tales. We will see you in the next one.